Hello parents, before we dive into today's topic, which is honestly a game changer for how your child approaches learning, I want to ask you something. Have you ever watched your child reading a textbook paragraph, close the book, and then completely forget what they just read? They put in the hours, they highlight, they memorize, but when the exam twists the question just a little bit, they crumble. I see this all the time as a tutor as well, so for the longest time, I thought the answer was just more practice papers, but it's not. The answer is understanding, and today we are going to talk about a technique used by a Nobel Prize winning physicist that I have adapted specifically for our Singaporean kids facing the PSLE and O-levels. Let's get comfortable and dive in. So I want to start by naming the enemy, and the enemy is not the exam. The enemy is called shallow knowledge. So look at the left side of this slide. This is our child when they are stuck in memorization mode. They can tell you that the xylem transport water, they can spell transpiration, they look prepared. But then the PSLE paper throws them a question about a plant in aircon room versus a plant in the outdoors. Then they have no idea how to apply what they know or learned. Now look at the right side. This is a story about the famous physicist Richard Feynman.
Looking at a bird, he says, "Do you know what that bird is? It's a brown-throated thrush. But in Portuguese, it's a ondorapero. In Italian, a ciuterapicita. He says in Chinese, it's a chongmongpop. In Japanese, a patata breccia, etc." He says, now they know all the languages you want to know what the name of that bird is. And when you're finished with all that, he says, you'll know absolutely nothing whatever about the bird. You only know about humans in different places and what they call the bird. Now he says, let's look at the bird and what it's doing. He doesn't give me a name. He knew the difference between knowing the name of something and knowing something.
You can know the names of that bird in all different languages, and at the end of it, you know absolutely nothing about the bird itself. You don't know what it is, you don't know how it flies, and you don't know why it migrates. Parents, this is the difference between an AL1 and an AL5 or 6. The child who memorizes knows the name, the child who understands knows the bird. And the PSLE is asking always about the bird every single time. Names does not constitute knowledge. Maybe I will illustrate using an example from one of my students. Let me introduce you to someone I want to call Leo. So Leo is a P6 student. He's not lazy. He sits at his desk, he opens his science textbook, and he reads the chapter on plant transport system. He spent the whole evening highlighting and memorizing the exact definitions, believing this is the key. So during the exam the next day, when facing with a structured application question, how does cutting a ring of phloem affect the survival of that plant? Leo freezes and writes the wrong answer. This is a typical example of shallow knowledge versus deep knowledge. The solution here is a new approach of study, concept-first approach, using Feynman's technique. The Feynman technique starts with a blank piece of paper, so Leo has to close the textbook and write the topic at the top. In this case, plant transport system. Then explain it aloud, as if he's teaching someone who knows absolutely nothing about science, like my curious 8-year-old QQ. Why is this so powerful? Because when you write and speak at the same time, you force your brain into something called active recall. It's like a stress test for your memory. You cannot hide. You find out immediately when you actually know versus you just recognize it because it was sitting in the textbook. So Leo starts talking, and he says, well, the xylem is a vascular bundle ensuring unidirectional flow, blah blah blah. And QQ says, stop right there, Leo. What is vascular bundle? And what does unidirectional mean? This is step 2, and this is the step where most kids get uncomfortable and where the most real learnings happens. No jargons are allowed. Jargons sounds impressive, but if you can't explain it to an 8-year-old QQ in simple words, you don't actually understand it. If little QQ doesn't get it, you haven't explained it well. You are simply just reciting what you know, not understanding it. Leo has hit a wall. He realized his explanation made no sense. And that feeling of I don't know, this is really uncomfortable. But I tell you, as someone who has worked with many students in the past, that discomfort is actually the doorway to deep learning. The Feynman technique forces students to lean into this friction. That uncomfortable moment of getting stuck is the difference between what you actually understand and what you think you understand. So now, Leo does what most kids don't do. He doesn't just flip pages mindlessly. He goes back to the textbook like a detective. He has a specific question now. not what is this chapter transport system in plant is about. It's about how does water actually move up the stem, what is the force. He's hunting for one missing pieces. This is a targeted learning, it's efficient, it's filling the learning gap. Liu finds the answer is called transpiration pool. So good, he has the scientific term, but now we do the real work. He goes back to his blank piece of paper and he asks, how do I actually explain this to QQ? And come up with this simple, beautiful analogy that QQ can understand. The leaves of the plant sweat water into the air, and that sweating acts just like when you suck on a straw. It creates a pool, a vacuum that drags the water all the way up from the roots. So parents, when an 8-year-old can visualize a straw, they understand this. They don't just know the word transpiration, they see the mechanism. And that analogy will stay with them forever. That is the most important mastery. Now I know what some of you might be thinking. So Yamama, this is lovely for understanding, but the PSLE is about marks. Will this help my child to score? The honest answer is, this is the only thing that will help them score on the tricky questions. The PSLE is designed to push route memorization. They don't ask what is xylem, what is fluent. They give you a story about a farmer and a plastic bag and ask you explain the droplets, blah blah blah. If your child memorizes the definition, they panic. But if the child understands the straw, they think, oh, the plant is sucking water up like drinking from the straw, the bag caught the sweat, then there's water droplets. They can reason that way to the answer. That is adaptability. This is how you get the AL1 or AL2, even when the question looks unfamiliar. So pause here. This is where first principle thinking kicks in. The first lesson I learned as a strategy consultant is about first principle thinking. So which means breaking a problem down to the most basic facts that you are very sure about that is true. Okay, so Liu has his amazing straw analogy. He feels great. But here is the science fact. We lose up to 2/3 of the new information that we learn within 48 hours, which is 2 days. It just leaks out of your brain naturally, without you knowing. So the pro tip number 1 here is, once your child creates this simple analogy, write it on a single flashcard or anywhere that enable them to see easily. Just that one idea, then test them on it tomorrow. Then in 3 days, then the next week. This is called spaced repetition. And this is the secret to locking understanding into a long-term memory. We are building memory library, not a pile of sticky notes. So pro tip number 2, make it into a game. So don't try to do it for 3 hours on a Sunday. You will both be exhausted and frustrated. Instead, try for a streak. Challenge your child to teach you one single concept every day. Just one. Maybe it is what they learn in school that morning. Put a sticker on the calendar for every day they complete a 10-minute teaching session to you or the daddy. 10 minutes a day, that's it. Consistency beats intensity every single time. And it builds a habit of learning that will serve them all the way through secondary school and beyond. Now, because I want to be a trusted source for you, I have to be honest with you about when not to use this Feynman Technique. So the Feynman Technique is a precision tool. It's not for everything. It's mainly used for broad, complex, and high-yield concepts like cell division, plant transportation, gravity, forces, blah blah blah. Do not use it for just memorizing facts. Don't try to Feynman your 6 times tables, just memorize them because those are facts. Don't use it for spelling words. And most importantly, don't use it before step 0. Your child needs to at least have a read at the material first and do the first round of scraping and understanding. You cannot explain what you haven't seen or haven't read or learned. This is for deep understanding, not for the first glance. Parents, this slide is dedicated for you and I want you to feel relieved. You do not need to be a science or maths expert to do this. In fact, if you are an expert, you need to pretend you are not. Your job is simply to be a curious 8-year-old like QQ. Your entire vocabulary should be just 2 phrases. Number 1, why does this happen? And number 2, I don't understand that particular word. Can you explain or make it simpler? That's it. You are the audience. Let your child lead and let your child be the teacher. You will be amazed at what they can figure out when they are the one explaining, which slowly will also build up their self-confidence. I love this line. Deep knowledge is not a talent. It is patient, honest work. Some kids look like they are naturally good in a certain subject, such as science, but it's not magic. They aren't born with a science brain. they have to just learn it, often by accident, how to build their own understanding. They ask why until it makes sense to them. And this is a tool that will serve them forever, the Feynman Technique. Not just in PSLE, but in life, in their careers, in their relationship, in how they solve problems in the future. So teaching your child how to think is the greatest gift that you can give them. So parents, remember this Feynman checklist here. 1. Write the topic down on a blank piece of paper. 2. Explain it out loud without jargon. 3. Find the gaps and return to the textbook or any resources for targeted learning. Learn it. And 4th, refine it into a simple analogy until you can explain it to an 8-year-old, such as QQ. So here is my invitation to you. After this video ends, don't just save the idea for later, actually do it. Grab a piece of blank paper for your kids and sit down with your child for 10 minutes. Ask them to teach you something they learned in school yesterday or this morning, right now. Maybe it's on plant transport system, maybe it's about fraction. Just try it. And I would genuinely love to know how it goes. Which concept did your child Feynman for you? Let me know in the comments below. Your story actually helped me to understand what you and your kids need. And they help me create better contents for this community in the future. If you are new here, please consider subscribing. I'm Yamama, an ex-corporate strategy consultant, also with more than 15 years of private tuition experience, now a mom to a 10-month-old baby, and I'm on a mission to help Singaporean parents to raise confident and curious learners without the stress and tears. We are in this together. Follow and subscribe for more study insights and parental guides. I will see you in the next video. Bye!